Well, hello and welcome to the Profit Express. I'm Tim Healy. I'm inviting you to join me each and every Wednesday so you can be prepared to win the battle for business. And hey, as always, thanks for sharing some of your time with me today. And of course, a big thanks to our great friends and sponsors, Corbett Public Relations, where they've been promoting and protecting businesses and brands for over 30 years. So do yourself a favor, visit Bill and his team at CorbettPR.com. That's CorbettPR.com. Welcome aboard, everybody. So, I'm sure you, like everybody else out there, has an opinion on Bud Light, the recent campaign they did with Dylan Mulvaney. But here's the thing for today's show. Whether you think it was a great ad, a fantastic ad, or you thought it was an absolute disaster of an ad, that really doesn't matter for the show today. Because in a marketing move like this, in a marketing and branding strategy that Bud Light chose to engage in, there are so many lessons to be learned. Okay? In the 18 days since the video aired, it was April 1st, the market capitalization for Anheuser-Busch dropped $4.71 billion as of yesterday. Now, again, it's a short period of time. Can it rebound? Of course it can. We don't know what the long-term effect or impact of this ad is going to be. But 18 days in, we have almost a $5 billion decline in Anheuser-Busch's market capitalization. Now, while most of the small business owners listening to the Profit Express, fans of the show, we wish we could have our market value drop by $5 billion and still be hugely successful. So it's not really an option for many of us, but it is in this whole saga of this Bud Light ad with Dylan Mulvaney that there are a ton of great lessons to be learned, and how they can apply, more importantly, to you, your business, and your brand. So once this really kind of hit the mainstream, and we've been talking about it somewhat nonstop for the last several weeks, there was one person I knew I wanted to have on the show, and he is none other than Bill Corbett, yes, of Corbett Public Relations. So when we talk about public relations, when we talk about crisis management, which Bud Light has had to engage in, Bill is my go-to source on the show to get his opinion and his thoughts. So, Bill, it's a great pleasure to have you back. How you doing today?
Doing awesome, Tim. It's been a little while since I've seen you, so it's good to be here and talking about some interesting topics. And I see you're drinking coffee. We're going to talk about drinking something else, or not drinking something.
Exactly right. And I always have you on when there's interesting topics to be spoken about. And I know we spoke a few years ago about when Gillette did their ad campaign on toxic masculinity back in 2019. And here we are, 2023, with another very interesting choice by Bud Light to choose to partner with, the social media influencer, Dylan Mulvaney. So let me just jump into it with you. Bottom line, should businesses get involved in socially heated topics?
Well, I think first you have to think about, when you're working with influencers and celebrities and people, right? So I call it the good, the bad, the ugly of paid spokespeople or people who are, really bringing out your brand message, right? The good is if you connect with somebody who understands the brand, they can share it. But the bad and the ugly are, the bad is someone who's not good at explaining the brand and connecting with it. And the ugly is if you have somebody who is a controversial person. I'm not saying that Dylan Mulvaney is necessarily controversial. Maybe to some people she isn't, to some people she isn't. And that's right. And that's just how people perceive it. But the fact is today, everything a business does, you have to take a moment to look and see what are some of these potential societal, political, and controversial aspects to a campaign or hiring a spokesperson to be part of your business to get your message out, and how do they connect or don't connect or disconnect from your current customers. So it's a very interesting, complex strategy, especially for companies like Anheuser-Busch that, they said they lost $5 billion in market cap. They're $100 billion, a company, in that capacity. but the real loss may come in terms of profits when it comes to the sale of product, at the beer distributors or bars. So there's a couple of different facets to look at here. So number one thing is to look at, take a mirror and look at yourself and look at the products you're selling and look at your campaign and think about it from every single conceivable angle and, to see how or if it could potentially backfire.
So, I mean, it's very interesting with this. I'm sure maybe you have seen they had the VP of marketing who they had her out there talking about the campaign. And listen, any business out there wants to expand market share. Okay, there's nothing wrong in that. And, are they trying to connect with the trans community? I have to imagine that was part of their idea. Again, maybe giving a new face and a new feel to Bud Light, because I think as that VP of marketing said, it had kind of become like a frat house, frat boy kind of beer, and the brand needed a facelift. I'm kind of paraphrasing what she said in that video.
She said the brand was in decline.
Yes,
and that,
yes.
You don't necessarily want to hear, that being said publicly or even privately. But Budweiser and Bud Light have been a little bit relegated to not as relevant today as they may have been, 10 or 15 years ago. And so for that meaning, and most brands need a refresh. They need to become current. They need to be appeal to different audiences. There's a lot of Gen Z, Gen X, and et cetera out there who want to communicate with. So the key is, how do you refresh brands? How do you reach out to new audiences without potentially alienating or angering, in this particular case, certain aspects of your current client base? So it's a very interesting, again, strategy that has to be considered here. And I know when their marketing rep went out there and tried to kind of explain it to people, I don't know if that was very effective, but it is important for companies not to hide. And their CEO did come out later and they issued a kind of wishy-washy statement saying we want to provide quality product to people, and discussions about these types of things should be had over a beer, and that's wonderful. But it's one of these, in the business, it's one of these statements that says something but says nothing. And it's vanilla, white toast, whatever you want to call it. It just is. They said something because they had to say something, but they really said almost nothing.
So and I know you help your clients, when the need does arise on crisis management, and companies can be in those situations.
Sure.
How do you think they handle it? I mean, you kind of already touched upon it. Like, if you had to give them a grade, what grade would you give Anheuser-Busch for this?
Well, I mean, I think in the research side, when they were planning on what they were doing, they don't get a very good grade. They probably get a C, because I don't think they looked at all aspects of what they were doing and looked at their current customer base. And look, the trans topics, and it's a very hot topic right now. You can't go anywhere without hearing about it. And,
sure.
From Florida to anywhere across America. So it's a hot topic, and you can see how the media and you can see how people, kind of galvanized around it from both sides. So, do I think they handled it well? I don't think they did. They handled it very well as of now. But the fact of the matter is that in most cases, when you have a situation like this where you have a disruptive, controversial situation, Nike had something similar with Colin Kaepernick, and there's been other situations over the years that, if you look at it historically, these types of things don't normally impact the brand in the long term. It's going to impact the guy and gal who own a liquor store or a package store or a beer distributor, and that product isn't going off the shelves, and it's going to hurt their bottom line, but they're selling other product, hopefully,
Right.
All, probably, if you look at this in 6 months or a year, it may not be that big of a deal. But, some people have long memories, and if they feel that this controversy in choosing this particular spokesperson for this campaign, which is one of many campaigns that Anheuser-Busch has, and we can talk about the positive, ads they've recently done to play up their American spirit and Clydesdale image, that, it's just part of a long-term look back we have to do to see what will really be the impact of this smaller campaign. Hey, look, nobody was talking about Bud Light a couple weeks ago. Now they're talking about Bud Light. So when they say sometimes, no publicity is not, you want any publicity is good publicity, as they say. So people are talking about the brand.
All right, but let me ask you this. So again, the headline is their market valuation drops almost $5 billion. Okay, but it's 18 days. Will they rebound? And to your point, which is a great point, the likelihood, like with Gillette or like with Nike, it probably isn't going to affect them, and they're going to rebound. Again, time will tell. Will it be different with Bud Light, Budweiser? We don't know. Do you think they lost sight of who their core customer is in choosing Mulvaney as a spokesperson?
I think they probably didn't consider their core customer and what their reaction would be. But the question is, they did it because they didn't think they had as many of those core customers anymore. I think they were moving away and they were losing relevance, as they said. I don't know what their sales were, but if they're choosing to go in a different direction, then to reach to a different community, my question is is the trans population in the United States large enough to really focus their attention on that, or is a marketing campaign that's larger that may have elements of inclusivity and being part of pride events and other things like that? Is that a smarter strategy? I'm not in the marketing suite of that company to tell you what they decided, but I can tell you that I don't think they spent the time to think about the backlash. And in the public relations business, you always have to have the what if question on your mind, and multiple what ifs. What if people such and such didn't like this, or what if these people are going to come out? And the what if they didn't really plan for here is, what if there is a major social media pushback? And in the world we live in today, something can go viral very quickly.
Yep.
Dylan Mulvaney has 10 million followers or more if you combine different accounts she has, right? Then this is going to blow up in a lot of different ways. I don't think they planned and were prepared for the social media impact, which may be lingering for weeks or months to come.
Now, they ran that ad, I don't know, recently, in response to the whole blow up. And the ad was just absolutely overrun and just oozing Americana, traditional Budweiser. Of course, they got the Clydesdale out there. They had two guys drinking a beer on a porch, all of that stuff. Do you think the American consumer can see through that? Is that an insult or smack in the face to the core of Bud Light? What do you think?
Well, I mean, the commercial that they ran, not this recent one, but the one that they did at the Super Bowl with the puppy and the, making its way home, and people were crying about it. So think about this: in early February, when the Super Bowl was taking place, right? And now we're in April. Budweiser was lauded as a great company, and this commercial was maybe voted the best or top commercial for the Super Bowl. More people saw that commercial. More people saw that commercial than have ever followed Dylan Mulvaney in 1 hour, 1 minute. So you have to look at the overall factors here. The current commercial, yes, it's oozing this stuff, but that's Budweiser. That's the way they've always been. But Budweiser isn't even an American company anymore. They're owned by AmBev, which is a European company. So the red, white, and blue of Budweiser, the red, white, and blue of Budweiser is more like the Bud Light can, which is blue and white. You don't have all the tradition still connected to the brand, but the older customers relate to the Clydesdales. That's been part of like Christmas holiday stuff for decades. It's part of Super Bowls, and it's part of Americana. So they're going back to their core, which people know. So I think that's a smart move in doing that, and I think they're going to pivot back, stay away from some of these marginal campaigns, and then focus on their core messaging. And they own market share. They're in all the stadiums. They're in all the big venues. So they have to keep their customers happy and remind them of that. And look, Americans have short memories. They're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if you see people walking down the street with cases of Bud Light. In a couple of weeks when it gets hot on Memorial Day rolls around. We forget about this stuff after it's out of the news cycle for a week or two. We did, unfortunately, have short memories.
Yeah.
Or fortunately, unfortunately,
either way,
it's good and bad.
Right. So now, all right. So one thing, because when I knew I wanted to talk to you about the topic today, there's also something I'm sure most of us are probably familiar with or heard of. I think it's certainly prevalent in larger corporations. There's two, I don't know if you want to call them indexes. or rankings or scores. One is referred to as ESG, which is environmental, social, and corporate governance. And it's how large corporations are rated as far as, how they run their companies, the culture, hiring practices, et cetera. And the other one is DEI, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, those two indexes, which again, is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, really applies to larger corporations, certainly publicly traded corporations, because they're rated on these scales. It influences how, or I should say, businesses certainly think about how they manage and hire based off of how they're going to be graded. Do you think, so here's the question, Bill, based on those two indexes that are, I believe, gaining more momentum, should they influence how corporations market?
All right. Well, let's first roll the clock back a little bit. And social responsibility or being a good corporate citizen has been around for a long time. This is not something new. Actually, giving back is good business, right?
Absolutely.
I looked up some statistics. And like the large corporations donated like $20 billion to charities, right? So that's fantastic. Corporations are doing a lot of social good. The top 10 companies donated $2 billion. I'm sorry, just looking at some of my statistics here. So social responsibility has been around a long time, right? Now, as the country has progressed, we're in a little bit of a progressive era, a woke era, maybe, if you want to call it, right? Where, people are looking at, they're concerned about the environment. They're concerned about equity, inclusion, and diversity in the workplace. And they're concerned about if companies are fair, right? And it's from an investing point of view. But it's also from an employment point of view. A lot of statistics show that people want to work at companies that are diverse, and a lot of statistics show that companies that are diverse are actually more successful. So there's evidence around it. So the trend toward DEI and ESG has been around for a while, and so should companies take this into account and promote their the way they operate their companies, and transparency has become a very popular term in the past decade. Talking about how they operate and what companies care about. And they need to do that to some degree today to attract workers, because it's a very hard market to attract people. You want to do whatever you can to attract and keep good employees.
Yeah.
And you also, from an investment point of view, you want people to invest in your companies, right? If they're part of a fund, or if you're part of just your stock itself as a publicly traded company, and do you get the score that allows you to have the credential to say, hey, invest in our company because we meet these criteria. All right. So maybe they do, and maybe they don't. So think about a company like, I'm not going to use a particular company name, but a fossil fuel company, right? A oil producing company. But a lot of these oil producing companies, obviously the product creates an environmental problem with emissions, right? The other side is pollution, right? The other side of it is a lot of these companies also invest a lot in renewable energy. Because they see the future too. They want to make efficient energy, and they want to make, some of them invest in solar, some of them invest in wind farms and other things like that. So are you not going to invest in a company like that because one side of the ledger has fossil fuels, but on the other side they have the green stuff that you may like personally? So that's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then social responsibility.
That's very interesting. Because like you said, a fossil fuel company is just a great example, because they will invest in alternative energy because they, from a business perspective, they can say, hey, if this is the next big thing, we want in on it. And they'll put a lot of money into it. Plus they also have, the big side of the business, which is fossil fuel. So you're kind of torn down the middle on that one. That's tough. Yeah.
And then, I have a master's degree in environmental management. That's, that I know a lot about this stuff, and being environmentally aware is something that a lot of people care about. But it's very hard to pick winners and pick losers. A rating may give you a certain number to look at, but you look at a company like Apple. I have Apple. I got an Apple phone. I have some money invested in Apple, right? But Apple produces the iPhone, right? Think of all the minerals and and all the manufacturing that goes into creating all their products. They do pollute. It's no secret. They take raw materials and they mine and they do all these things. So is Apple a great technology company? Are they a green company? They're definitely, I think, on the side of a good score when it would come to diverse and a great place to work in terms of that aspect of it. So I think it's a multi-dimensional thing. I think ratings are like the Morningstar ratings for mutual funds. It's kind of a guide. And they say these funds are good, but no rating is perfect. So I think people have to watch out for this. Remember that there was a big controversy about ESG a couple of weeks back. The Republicans in Congress wanted to ban and remove fund managers from even considering environmental and other factors when recommending funds. So there's a political side to this too. So people should do their investigations in terms of what their investments are, and if they feel socially responsible or environmentally responsible, look for the things that correlate the best with them. Speak with their advisors. But we live in a world today where people they want their money to go to where they want it to go, and other people honestly don't care. They want to just make the profits on their money, so they have what they need for when they invest. But it's definitely a trend. People who are doing, are focusing on that for their clients, but that's just investment advisors catering to different niches to make money themselves. And
you bring up you brought up a great topic with, if you look closely at any company, you use the fossil fuel one as an example, and then you use, whether it's iPhone, it's Apple or Samsung, it doesn't matter. And you said in one sense, they probably get great grades for diversity in the workplace, right? And I don't know if I'll make the assumption because I don't know technically, but I think they probably do, right? Okay. But interestingly, I've come across, the rabbit holes of the internet, the cobalt mining for batteries. I mean, if you want to talk about an atrocity, or lithium,
rare earth minerals.
Yeah, I mean, some of the conditions in which these minerals are mined in Africa, South Africa, make your head spin. But
and how about this one? What about big agriculture? Big agriculture feeds hundreds of millions of people around the world. Big agriculture, right? Mm-hmm. But in order to do that, they use pesticides. There's pollution. There's animal. People talk about cows and methane and all these things. So with everything that's good, there potentially is a negative. And how do you split hairs? On these things. So, but I think the bigger picture here is talking about companies being socially responsible, being environmentally responsible, and communicating that to their customers, stockholders, and the public in general. But so there has to be part of the strategy. If you have to do it these days because you're almost held to account that if you're not doing some of this or communicating some of this, you'll be shamed into doing it too. I don't think that's right. But again, giving back and being involved in some of these topics does get your company brand out there, and people want it. And people, they expect it to some degree, but in the end, $20 billion or more goes to support a lot of good charities. I'm not saying they're all on the up and up. I don't know, the balance sheets of everything, but social responsibility, being a good corporate citizen, has always been good business. I think we're talking about it, looking at through a slightly different lens today, but overall, I think it remains a good strategy, and but has to be a strategy. You have to think it out. You have to look into it and pick the charities that you want. I've worked with companies that have picked some charities and found out later that they're not really very good quality managed charities and almost scams to some degree. And they had some backlash from it. People found out that they donated to them, and their customers were not very happy because that particular organization was wrought with fraud. So you have to look at who you support, how you support, and where you support.
And I'm glad you brought up the fact that corporate America donates $20 billion a year, because listen, you and I personally have been a part of charities that have raised a lot of money here locally in the Long Island market, right? Great charities. And, corporate America is generous. And I'm saying, as a business owner, you're a business owner. We know it firsthand. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, capitalism, and this is really a little bit of battle on the higher level between, about capitalism and woke capitalism and et cetera. And the fact of the matter is that capitalism has created great wealth, and that great wealth has helped to support and lift millions upon millions of people out of poverty, done tremendous good, and it shouldn't be chastised. I think everyone should discuss how and what and ways to support causes and help it improve the lives of people. And that's a good debate to have. But I don't think the shaming of companies to do it is a good approach. And
right.
And there has to be a balance, and criticizing people for whether they choose to support a transgender person or whether they choose to support another more right-wing related cause. We need to be in a forum like this where we can discuss it and people can talk about it openly. But at the end of the day, the companies need to do it if it, one, fits with their mission, and two, fits with their obviously companies are in business to make money, so they have to be has to be in alignment with that as well, and what stockholders can concur with.
So, all right. So, Bill, let me ask you this. So your clients, my clients, we serve, for the most part, typical small businesses, right? And the people who listen to the show, the fans of the show, are the typical small businesses. And so they don't have the resources. They're not Anheuser-Busch, obviously. What do you want the typical small business to take away from this Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney experience, if you will? And, say they do want to get involved in a social cause. So what should they take away from it? What do they learn? And if they want to approach a social cause, what's the smart way to go about it so they don't get burnt?
It's a bit of a challenge. With smaller businesses, I always recommend that companies choose a charity that is close to their heart, or choose a cause that's close to their heart, that they're part of, their family's part of, or their business is part of. Like law firms that do elder care, it's only logical that they would get involved in like an Alzheimer's charity, right? So it fits with what you do. Or if you had a family member that passed away from cancer or something, you would get involved with that. So this is the problem, though. When you get involved with social causes, versus charitable causes, and sometimes they're not connected, they're a little bit different. And if you get involved with things that are politically controversial, then you're starting to create a problem. We're in a world today where it's about 50-50 split, the way that the Americans are in terms of their political leanings, right? So you're almost likely, if you get involved with anything that's slightly political, that you're going to offend half the people of the country. So my strategy is this: I don't like to get involved with anything that relates to religion. It's part of your business. You can be a faith person, you can give and things like that, but don't, not make it a huge part of your marketing. Two, controversial issues, stay far away from controversial issues, and politics. I recommend staying away from politics or things that are political, and some of these social causes are better left out of a business, and you can focus on something else that you really believe in, and you want to stay away from these potential pitfalls that could cause challenges. I'm not saying that it's wrong to do those things, but in a business context where it can impact your business, you probably need to think about it very deeply before you were to get involved with that. You see, when people support candidates on either side, that it impacts their business. You see, when they're involved with controversial causes, some people want to boycott them, other people flock to them.
Right.
Yeah, we're in a very tenuous type of situation today where a lot of thought has to go into who you choose to align with, what you choose to post online, And my theory about that is, if you ever have any question about what you're going to post online, don't post it online, and at least let it sit. At least let it sit overnight until you hash it out, and really take your time to look. Remember the good, the bad, the ugly. There's good things about spokespeople. But there can be bad and ugly things about them too. So it's complex.
Yeah, no, it is. And man, we could keep going on this, but it's not that any of these topics necessarily are wrong or bad, but we have to realize, because there's, like you said, you can alienate, half of the marketplace. So I think the takeaway for the small business owners is know what you're getting involved with, really dig deep to understand what could be the repercussions. And are you okay with it, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think there's something else to be said, though, because there's always going to be people, no matter what you do, they're going to criticize your business or you personally. I call them cave people. They're citizens against virtually everything, right? So you're always going to have somebody who's going to complain no matter what you do, right? So don't let that alone. If a few people are going to say something, stop you from doing something that you feel is important to you. But the fact is, don't be naive enough to expect that it won't happen. And are you prepared if it starts to happen and starts to blow up? Do you know what to do to respond to it or not respond to it? Because sometimes, like they say in medicine, first do no harm. So sometimes you just got to let things lie. And by the way, I think you're going to kind of see a little bit of that with the Bud Light thing. I think they're just going to kind of slowly step back from it and let it dissipate. And likely in 6 weeks at Memorial Day, people will be drinking Bud Light again.
I think you're right. We will see. Listen, Bill, thanks for jumping on board today. Great topic, great timing. Always love your insight.
Very good, Tim. See you soon.
You got it. My pleasure. And that, of course, is Bill Corbett, president of Corbett Public Relations. And certainly visit him and his team at CorbettPR.com. And tune in to shows just like today. Each and every Wednesday they drop. And we'll be sharing thoughts and insight that'll help you win the battle for business. Until next time, it's the Profit Express.